But he made it so easy, man, with the martial arts and all, stuff.
But I'm bandwagon. I like to stay happy. So whoever wins, I'll be happy with. But
For nearly 30 years, Friday has been one of the most quoted comedies ever made. And at the center of it all was Chris Tucker, whose performance not only defined the film, but also changed his life forever. But the truth behind Friday is far more unsettling than most people ever imagined. The story was pulled from real-life experiences tied to someone well-known, and the film itself was shot under conditions that could have gone dangerously wrong at any moment. But the biggest mystery surrounding the film is why Tucker never appeared in any of its sequels. Decades later, we finally know the reason why Tucker says he will never reprise the role of Smokey. The strange idea behind the film. Friday is one of the most beloved comedies of the 1990s. For nearly 3 decades, audiences have quoted lines from the film without even realizing where they came from. The movie became a cultural touchstone, launching catchphrases and characters that would live on for decades. But here is what most people do not realize. Friday almost did not happen at all. And even after it made it to the screen, some of the strangest details hidden inside the film have gone unnoticed by fans for nearly 30 years. The movie was released on April 28, 1995, and was directed by F. Gary Gray, a man who had never made a feature film before. The production companies behind it
know who I am? They say, yeah, don't worry. He speaks English. Don't you worry. Don't worry.
were New Line Productions and Ghetto Bird Productions, the latter being Ice Cube's own company. The budget was $3.5 million. By comparison, that was roughly what a single episode of a network television drama cost to produce at the time. The film opened in only 865 theaters, a modest release by any standard, and it went on to earn $27.4 million domestically. Hollywood called it a sleeper hit, implying that the success was accidental. But it was not. The success came from filling a gap that the film industry did not even know existed. Before 1995, movies set in the hood followed a predictable pattern. Boys and the Hood, Colors, and Menace to Society were all serious films about violence, gang life, and tragedy. They were important films, but they only told one side of the story. Ice Cube has said publicly that the media showed the Hood as nothing but menace and violence. That was real, he acknowledged. But it was not the whole truth. In his words, people had fun in the Hood. That lighthearted element,
That was the funnest part of doing Rush Hour, was fighting with Jackie, because
the everyday humor of sitting on a porch and laughing with your friends, was completely absent from every major film about black life at the time. Cube and his writing partner DJ Pooh deliberately set out to create something different. They wanted a Hood classic, a movie you could watch over and over and over again, not a tragedy or a lecture, something that felt like a Saturday afternoon in the neighborhood. That idea sounds simple now, but in 1995, no studio was asking for a comedy set in the projects. No executive was looking for a script where the biggest conflict was getting fired from a delivery job and owing a dealer $200. Cube and Pooh wrote that script anyway. Most of what ended up on screen came from real life. The scene where Craig gets fired from his job was based on Ice Cube's actual cousin, who worked as a delivery driver for UPS and was fired on his day off. The character Smokey, a street dealer with a good heart and a bad habit, was based on DJ Pooh's own stint as a dealer. Ice Cube has stated publicly that a majority of the film is drawn from real experiences. The people on that screen were not caricatures. They were neighbors. The inexperience behind the film is staggering. Friday was only the third script Ice Cube had ever written. The first two went undeveloped. Cube and Pooh knew that major studios would not take them seriously, so they genuinely considered financing the film themselves. To save money, they seriously discussed shooting the entire movie in black and white. They approached New Line Cinema specifically because of the success of the House Party series. That was the model, the type of film they aimed to replicate. The director, Gary Gray, later admitted that he was scared audiences would not buy Ice Cube in a comedy. He called Cube the toughest man in America, noting that the idea of him being funny seemed impossible. But Cube chose Gray because they had similar backgrounds. Cube believed Gray would accurately capture the film's aesthetic. Gray had been trying to get a short film made to break into Hollywood. Cube skipped that entirely and handed him a feature. The film became a certified sleeper hit, but its true profitability did not come from theaters. Friday proved even more successful on VHS and DVD, extending its revenue for years. What started as a $3.5 million gamble became a franchise. But none of that would have mattered without the actor who played Smokey. And hiring him was the biggest risk of all. Casting Chris Tucker was a risk. Ice Cube and DJ Pooh had written the script. They had found a director, and they had taken their idea to New Line Cinema, hoping the studio would see the potential. Thankfully, New Line agreed to finance the film, but there was a catch. One non-negotiable condition. If they were to write the check, the actor selected for the lead role had to be replaced. Ice Cube's co-writer DJ Pooh was supposed to play Smokey. The character had been built around him, but New Line executives looked at Pooh's resume and saw a writer and a musician, not an actor. They wanted someone with more experience, someone who had already proven he could hold an audience. Cube did not want to make that change. He believed in Pooh. But the studio held the money, and the money was the only thing standing between a script and a movie. So Cube and Pooh went looking for a replacement. They considered serious names. Chris Rock was in the running. So was Tommy Davidson, a veteran of In Living Color. Both were funny, both had credentials, and both would have made the studio happy. But Cube had seen someone else, a young comedian from Atlanta who performed on Def Comedy Jam with a style that did not look like anyone else's. His name was Chris Tucker. Tucker was 22 years old. He had almost no film experience, but what he had was energy. He talked fast, moved faster, and seemed to vibrate on stage. Cube and Pooh wrote the role of Smokey specifically to match that manic energy. But when Tucker came in for his first audition, something went wrong. The audition was bad. People in the room were not impressed. Tucker later admitted he had not prepared properly. He thought he could just show up and be himself, and that would be enough. It was not. But instead of walking away, something unusual happened. The people casting the film gave him a second chance. In Hollywood, second chances at auditions are rare. Studios do not usually wait around for a 22-year-old to figure it out. But Cube and Pooh saw something in Tucker that the first audition had not captured. They told him to come back another day, and they gave him another chance. Tucker knew he needed help. He reached out to an actress named Angela Means. Means had been cast to play a small role in the film. Her character was a neighborhood woman named Felicia, a part so minor that most actors would not have thought twice about it. But Tucker did not call Means for a job reference. He called because he wanted to work with her acting coach. He thought a few sessions with a professional might fix whatever had gone wrong in that first audition. Means had a different idea. Instead of sending Tucker to a coach, she invited him to dinner. They sat down together over spaghetti, and Means ran him through a workshop session right there at the table. She pushed him and challenged him. She made him find the character instead of just performing the lines. By the time that spaghetti was gone, Means later said, Chris had become Smokey. The character came alive at a dinner table over a plate of pasta. Tucker got the part, but the paycheck was almost nothing. He was paid exactly $10,000 for his work on Friday. That sounds like real money, and in 1995, it was not nothing. But compared to what the film would go on to earn, compared to what Tucker himself would later command for a single movie, $10,000 was a symbolic amount. Tucker has said publicly that he did not care about the money. He wanted the opportunity and the chance. The budget for the whole film was only $3.5 million, and Tucker understood that everyone was sacrificing. He was just glad to be there. The shooting schedule was brutal. It took 20 days. That was all the time they had to make an entire movie. Most Hollywood productions take 2 or 3 months. Friday had just 3 weeks. Because of the low budget, the actors were only allowed 2 takes per scene. If you messed up the first take, you had one more chance to get it right. If you messed up the second take, the scene stayed wrong. There was no money for a third try. Tucker has reflected on that pressure with surprising fondness. He said the smallness of the movie was actually the beauty of it. It allowed him to get into character without distractions. Just a camera, and him and Cube on the porch. That porch became the heart of the film. The conversations between Craig and Smokey, the back and forth, and the arguments about nothing and everything were not written in a traditional script. Much of it was improvisation. Tucker and Cube fed off each other. 2 takes per scene meant they had to be ready instantly. There was no time to overthink or second guess. The camera rolled and they performed. But while the porch scenes were safe, the rest of the set was not. What happened behind the scenes during those 20 days of filming was dangerous in ways that the audience never saw. And the actors who lived through it have only recently started talking about how bad things really got. The set was dangerous in reality. The house where Craig and Smokey spent most of their time was not a soundstage. It was not a backlot in Hollywood. It was a real house on a real street in south-central Los Angeles. The exact location was the corner of 126th Street and Normandy. That neighborhood was also where the director, F. Gary Gray, spent his childhood. He knew every block, every porch, and every alley. The primary houses used for filming belonged to his actual childhood friends. When Gray pointed a camera at a building, he was pointing it at his own past. That personal connection made the movie feel authentic. But it also created a problem that no one on the production team could solve. The area was a known territory of the Crips street gang. For anyone who grew up in South Central, this was not a secret. The Crips had a visual identity that everyone recognized. They wore blue. This meant that bandanas, hats, jackets, and anything in that specific shade of blue signaled allegiance. Their bitter rivals, the Bloods, wore red. The 2 colors did not mix. In some parts of Los Angeles during the 1990s, wearing the wrong color in the wrong neighborhood could get a person assaulted, or worse. The production team had to make a rule. Red clothing of any kind was completely banned from the set, not just for the actors, but for every single crew member. If someone showed up wearing a red shirt, a red hat, red shoes, or anything like that, they were sent home. The risk was not theoretical. Appearing to be a member of a rival gang in that territory, even by accident, even for a movie, could lead to violence. Crew members had to check their wardrobe carefully every single morning before driving to the location. One mistake could put the entire production in danger. The locals did not make things easier. In one scene, a flashback where Smokey sits in a lowrider with Hector and his friend, there is something happening in the background that most viewers have never noticed. 2 men are sitting on a block wall. They are not actors. They are actual neighborhood residents who had no interest in being in a movie. Production staff walked over and asked them politely to move out of the shot, but the men refused. They were sitting on their own property, and they knew the production had no authority to tell them what to do. The crew tried to negotiate. They offered compensation and even offered walk-on roles. They tried everything they could think of to get those two men to move, even just a few feet to the left or right. The men still refused. They did not want money. They did not want to be in the film. They wanted to sit on the wall. So the production had a choice: stop filming or keep them in the shot. They decided to keep filming. Those two men are still in the final cut of the movie, sitting on that wall, completely indifferent to the Hollywood production happening around them. Most people have watched Friday dozens of times and never noticed. But once you know they are there, you cannot unsee them. The most striking location detail involves a different house. In the scene where the character Debo hits Red, played by DJ Pooh, and Red flies through the air, the house behind that moment is F. Gary Gray's actual childhood home. The director grew up in the house where one of the film's most iconic violent moments occurs. Gray knew exactly what that house looked like on camera. He knew how the light hit the porch. He knew the angles. He chose his own childhood home as the backdrop for a beating because he understood instinctively that the location would feel real. The danger on set was not just about gang territory. The 20-day shooting schedule created its own hazards. There were long hours, little sleep, and no time for mistakes. Actors were expected to show up ready, nail their 2 takes, and move on. There was no room for someone to have an off day, no room for technical difficulties, and no room for the usual chaos of filmmaking. Every hour of every day mattered because there were no extra hours to borrow. Chris Tucker arrived on set each morning knowing he had to deliver. He was the youngest member of the main cast. He had the least experience, and he was playing a character that the studio had wanted for a more experienced actor. The pressure should have crushed him. Instead, he did something very unexpected. He started changing the lines to something else entirely. And the truth of how much of the movie was actually improvised has finally come to light. Tucker improvised some parts of the script. The script that Ice Cube and DJ Pooh had written was strong. It had structure, and it had jokes. It had a beginning, a middle, and an end. But when the cameras started rolling, something unexpected happened. The words on the page became suggestions. Cube has stated publicly that approximately 35% of the finished movie was improvised. More than a third of what audiences laughed at was never in the original screenplay. And for at least one actor, the number was even higher. Faison Love played Big Worm, the neighborhood ice cream man with a temper and a firearm. Love has admitted that he did not use the script at all. Not some of it. Not most of it. None of it. He showed up, listened to what the other actors gave him, and responded in character. Everything Big Worm said came out of Love's head in the moment. That is not how movies are supposed to work. Screenplays exist for a reason. Dialogue is planned, and scenes are rehearsed. But Friday was not a normal movie, and the 20-day shooting schedule did not allow for the usual process. The Ford Pinto that Smokey drove was not supposed to be a joke. It was supposed to be a car. Director F. Gary Gray ordered a used vehicle that looked like something Smokey would own. But the car they bought had mechanical problems that no one discovered until filming began. It broke down constantly, and the crew had to push it off camera to get it started again. That jerky, unpredictable movement viewers see on screen was not acting. That was the car refusing to cooperate. Gray kept the footage because the car's stubbornness made Smokey's character even funnier. This production flaw became comedy by accident. Most fans never realized that the most famous line in the movie was never written down. When Debo hits red and Smokey reacts, Chris Tucker improvised the entire sequence. Every face, every sound, and every word. The line that followed, the one that has been quoted millions of times, was not in the script. Tucker created it on the spot, right at that moment, with no second chance to get it right, because the budget did not allow for second chances. The line became the signature moment of the film, one of the things people remember most. Another line that took on a life of its own came from a different improvisation. Angela Means played Felicia, a neighborhood woman who shows up briefly and gets dismissed. The name Felicia came from someone the writers knew, but the way Tucker said it, the specific cadence and complete lack of concern in his voice, was improvised. He turned a simple name into a cultural weapon. Decades later, Bye Felicia became an internet meme used to dismiss inconsequential people. That phrase was not in the script. It was not planned or rehearsed. The two-take constraint forced a kind of creativity that most actors never experience. There was no room for error, and no luxury of trying 10 different versions of a scene and picking the best one in editing. This meant that improvisation had to work immediately. Tucker could not spend an hour finding the character. He had to arrive on set already inside Smokey's head. The pressure was immense, but it also produced something rare. A spontaneity that felt too real. But that magic came at a cost. Tucker became famous almost overnight. Friday turned him from a struggling comedian into a sought-after actor. Ice Cube went on to produce 2 more sequels, releasing Next Friday in 2000 and Friday After Next in 2002. But to everyone's surprise, Chris Tucker was nowhere to be found in either film. Why did Tucker leave Friday behind? Well, the reason he walked away from the role that made him famous is not what fans have believed for decades. The shocking reason Tucker left the franchise. After the success of the first film, Ice Cube wanted to keep the franchise going. He had created something that resonated with audiences in a way no one had predicted. And the natural next step was a sequel. 2 sequels eventually followed, with Next Friday arriving in 2000 and Friday After Next in 2002. But Chris Tucker was not in either of them. For years, fans assumed they knew why. The most common explanation was money. People believed Tucker had asked for too much, or that the studio had refused to pay him what he was worth. That assumption made sense on the surface. Tucker had become a bigger star after Friday, and bigger stars command bigger paychecks. But the assumption was wrong. The truth about why Tucker left the franchise has nothing to do with salary negotiations or scheduling conflicts. The real reason is much more personal, and it started 2 years after the original film was released. In 1997, Tucker became a born-again Christian. That decision changed the way he saw himself, his career, and the character that had made him famous. Smokey was beloved by audiences, but Smokey also used foul language constantly and exhibited inappropriate habits throughout the film. Those were the very things that made the character funny to so many people. But they were also the things that began to trouble Tucker after his religious conversion. He did not want to represent those behaviors anymore. He did not want to be the reason young people thought certain habits were harmless or funny. That conflict between his faith and his most famous role became impossible to ignore when Ice Cube came calling about a sequel. The money on the table was substantial. Ice Cube has publicly stated that he and the production team were ready to pay Tucker between $10 and $12 million to appear in Next Friday. That was not a rumor or a negotiation starting point. It was a real offer. But Tucker turned it down. He turned it down not because he wanted more, but because he did not want to use foul language or do certain things on camera anymore. The character of Smokey, as written, required both. Tucker could not reconcile those requirements with who he had become. Ice Cube confirmed this directly in a response to a fan on Twitter. The fan had claimed that Tucker quit over money, and Cube corrected that claim with specific details. He said the team was ready to pay Tucker millions of dollars for next Friday, but Tucker turned them down for religious reasons. That statement from Cube settled a debate that had gone on for years. It was never about the paycheck. It was about personal conviction. Tucker has since explained his decision in his own words. In an interview with All Urban Central, he said that one of the reasons he did not do the second movie was because of the bad habits Smokey had. He explained that the film became a phenomenon, and he did not want everybody doing the things Smokey did. He admitted that he had never really told people the truth before because he had kind of forgotten about it. But it was one of the reasons he said no. He did not want to keep doing the character. That admission was striking not just for what it revealed, but for how quietly Tucker had kept it for so many years. He let people assume what they wanted. He let the money rumors circulate. He never defended himself or corrected the record until much later. The writers of Next Friday tried to solve the problem for him. In the sequel, Smokey's absence is explained by revealing that he is in rehab. This was a clever solution. It acknowledged the character's illicit substance use while also showing that he was trying to change. But even that was not enough for Tucker. He still declined. The character could not be separated from the behaviors that made him who he was, and Tucker was no longer willing to perform those behaviors for an audience. The rehab explanation was a bridge, but Tucker chose not to cross it. The financial sacrifice was real. $10 to $12 million for one movie is life-changing money for almost anyone. Tucker also turned down a similar payday for Last Friday, the planned final film in the franchise. At minimum, he walked away from $10 to $12 million and potentially much more across multiple sequels. But here is what the money conversation misses. Tucker did not walk away from Friday into an empty career. He went on to star in The Fifth Element, a science fiction blockbuster from director Luc Besson. He then teamed up with Jackie Chan for Rush Hour, a film that became a massive global hit and spawned 2 sequels. For Rush Hour 3 alone, Tucker was paid $25 million. That is more than double what he would have made for Next Friday. So while he left money on the table from the Friday franchise, he more than made up for it elsewhere. The more interesting question is not whether Tucker lost money, but whether he made the right choice for himself. He has said that leaving the franchise was probably good for him, because it kept him moving to the next phase and the next movies. Tucker has consistently stood by his choice based on his personal convictions. He does not talk about it with bitterness or defensiveness. He talks about it as a simple fact. The character no longer fit who he was, so he walked away. There is a final Friday film reportedly being planned. It is called Last Friday. Reports say Tucker has already declined to appear in it, and the reason is the same as it was in 1997. He does not want to play a character who uses foul language and displays inappropriate behavior. That decision has cost him millions of dollars across 3 decades. Yet, he has never wavered. Whether audiences agree with his choice or not, they cannot say he made it for the wrong reasons. Would you like to see Chris Tucker reprise his role one last time? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click on the next video on your screen, like this video, and subscribe to our channel for more updates.